to the store and he continues to fire on the officers, what would he do with the hostages that were inside? And as we spoke with him through crisis negotiation and efforts to obtain his release, he threatened to kill hostages. He threatened to kill people inside.
But she was shot outside.
She was shot at our investigation at this point, she is exiting the store as Atkins is going into the store.
Final question.
How many shots did you
This one in the red is what I'm promised, and I'll come back to you, and that'll be the last. Yes?
Chief, you said that Atkins fired 2 rounds. Do we know how many rounds officers fired?
Yes. Well, Atkins fired more than 2 rounds. Atkins fired rounds both at his initial assault on 32nd Street. He fired multiple rounds and during the course of the pursuit. And then he fired rounds at the termination point of the pursuit as he exited the vehicles. And then once he was inside the store, he fired 3 additional rounds that we know of right now. And his gun, when it was recovered, had additional rounds inside of it. The officers fired a total of 8 rounds. And that's what our investigation leads us to believe. Last question, and then we'll end this. Thank you.
Thank you. How long was it before the officers rescued this woman?
Are we ready now?
Can we do it like it?
He wants to do it too, so can you read that? I'll do Spanish up there. Yeah.
Okay.
That way we can get the microphone, because the microphone stands not working.
All right, everybody, if you are on with us, thanks for joining us today on the stream here at Fox 5 Live. Jumping right into that update from LAPD on that Trader Joe's hostage situation that happened this past weekend. Now, details are still coming out and names aren't being released, but apparently a man, 28 years old, in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles, shot his grandmother 7 times and injured another woman. And then this whole sort of chase ensued. They ended up in a Trader Joe's in the Silver Lake neighborhood and held some people hostage for quite a while. We're told one woman was fatally shot during this ordeal. Not quite sure if that gunfire came from police as they were sort of exchanging fire after the suspect came out. But there is a whole kind of scary story from Sunday detailed here, and police were just updating on that. So unfortunately, we jumped in kind of in the middle of that. If you didn't catch it, kind of scroll back and hear some of the details from police. We'll be hoping to update you guys more throughout the day on that if police do hold another press conference. Meanwhile, we're live here in the DC newsroom. Thanks for joining us here in Washington, D.C. at Fox 5 DC. We're going to be tracking live video and live events that are happening here and around the country. And we're going to start with some of the top stories that we've been seeing from here and around the nation, just to kind of get you up to speed with President Trump and some of the politics on the Hill for the past couple of days. Today, President Trump will be making some remarks in Kansas City, Missouri. He'll be at the 119th anniversary of the VFW National Convention. So we'll be hoping to have that live for you here on the stream. So that's in a little bit. But for now, we'll show you some of these top stories.
To sue us now, or they are suing us. It's outrageous. You know, it's like being kicked again to the ground.
Victims of the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history say they're outraged over MGM's lawsuit against them.
And to blame the victims, to say that it's anyone else's fault other than their own, it's absurd.
MGM Resorts International owns Mandalay Bay, the hotel where Stephen Paddock opened fire last October, killing 58 people and injuring hundreds at a country music festival. He then killed himself. The company is suing victims in at least 7 states, hoping to get federal courts to declare the company has no liability for the massacre. MGM says its security vendor took all necessary precautions approved by the Department of Homeland Security. But an attorney for some of the victims says a previous incident at Mandalay Bay shows MGM could have done more to prevent future attacks. In November 2014, a convicted felon was caught stockpiling semi-automatic weapons in his room. One rifle was pointed out the window towards the Las Vegas Strip.
This Dunbar incident was 3 years before the shooting last year, and that made it foreseeable that another event might occur.
MGM faces dozens of lawsuits in many jurisdictions, and it argues that moving the cases to federal court would be the fastest way to resolve them and would be better for the victims. In Las Vegas, Andrew Kraft, Fox News.
Several wildfires burning around Athens, Greece Monday. Large flames and thick smoke filled the air surrounding the capital, with strong winds fanning the fires.
It is a difficult night for Greece. More than 600 men and women from the fire brigade and 300 vehicles have been mobilized on 3 large fronts.
More than 100 people have been injured and dozens more have died. Most of the victims were found in their homes or cars in the popular vacation destination of Mati. Dramatic video shows some of the devastating aftermath. Charred streets and vehicles and bodies burn when the fire ripped through, the blaze gutting homes in the region and is threatening ancient structures. Large plumes of smoke were seen nearing the Acropolis. Overwhelmed fire officials are asking for help tackling the spreading fires.
Due to the large expanse, the intensity, and the dangers the fires pose, the country has submitted a request through the European Civil Protection Mechanism for international ground and air assistance.
And early this morning, officials urgently evacuating people stranded in beach towns. Residents and tourists scrambled to flee as the flames drew closer. Some only had one way out, by boat.
The flames were chasing us all the way to the water. It burned our backs and we dove into the water.
It was lightning fast. We didn't realize what had happened.
It's not clear what sparked the wildfires, but a state of emergency has been declared. And new reports out this morning say 26 of the victims were found overnight inside just 2 homes. In Los Angeles, Robert Gray, Fox News.
America never waves the white flag. We only wave the red, white, and blue flag. The era of economic surrender for the United States is over.
Even as President Trump welcomed to the White House a shining array of U.S. manufacturers, business owners, and ag producers for the annual Made in America showcase, economic storm clouds were brewing over the impact of his aggressive trade and tariff policies that some fear could limit the ability for many of those same manufacturers to sell their wares abroad. In recent weeks, Mr. Trump has slapped billions of dollars in tariffs on China and the EU, citing national security concerns, unfair trade practices, and the need for reciprocal market access. But then the EU retaliated, hitting the U.S. with higher tariffs on motorcycles, jeans, and bourbon. Beijing responded, targeting U.S. ag products, including corn, pork, and poultry.
I'll remind you that tariffs really are consumer taxes.
But administration officials insist any short-term discomfort will be far outweighed by increased fairness for American workers. In fact, the U.S. Census Bureau reported that the U.S. goods and services deficit was $43 billion in May. That's actually down $3 billion from April.
These trade issues didn't occur overnight. President Trump is determined to have free and fair and more balanced trade, and we just want to make sure American companies and American workers are treated fairly. And yes, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel.
The trade back and forth comes as the administration is touting a robust jobs outlook, with more than 3.2 million new jobs created since the president took office. and near record low unemployment. All this is happening in a week that we expect to see the president of the European Commission come here to the White House. That's set up right now for Wednesday, no doubt hoping to tamp down that budding trade war. At the White House, I'm Kevin Cork, Fox News. Next up, Fox 5 News and 5. All this is happening in a week that we expect to see the president of the European Commission come here to the White House. Right now, that is on the schedule for Wednesday, no doubt hoping to tamp down that budding trade war. At the White House, I'm Kevin Cork, Fox 5 News. One more, Fox 5 News. Next up is Fox 20.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe.
That's former CIA Director John Brennan, former FBI Director James Comey, former top spy Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former CIA Director Michael Hayden, former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, as well as former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe.
The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances.
The issue came up at the briefing after Republican Senator Rand Paul tweeted that he would ask President Trump to pull Brennan's clearance. After the Helsinki summit, Brennan tweeted that the president's actions were treasonous.
Making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate, and the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
In a tweet, former CIA Director Michael Hayden seemed to brush off the threat, writing, "I don't go back for classified briefings, won't have any effect on what I say or write." Clapper said, "It's kind of a sad commentary for political reasons." A friend of Comey's asked the former FBI director whether he even has a security clearance to revoke, and Comey replied, "Nope." A spokeswoman for McCabe, who was fired earlier this year, said her client's clearance was already deactivated.
This strikes me as a way of lashing out at the president's critics, but that's part of the is to defend your positions, but attacking them this way seems to me to set a pretty dangerous precedent.
The president also weighed in on a weekend document dump from the FBI and Justice Department. Though heavily redacted, the 412 pages released late Saturday indicate that the unverified dossier financed by the DNC and Clinton campaign helped secure the October 2016 surveillance warrant for Trump campaign aide Carter Page. On Twitter, the president tied in the Robert Mueller special counsel Russia probe and the National Security Court known as FISA, characterizing the opposition research as the fake dirty dossier that was knowingly and falsely submitted to the FISA, which was responsible for starting the totally conflicted and discredited Mueller witch hunt.
According to this letter obtained by Fox News, House Republicans on the Intelligence Committee want the president to immediately declassify two key sections because they believe the FBI's use of the dossier violates strict internal rules. Sanders said the president has chosen to remain uninvolved and wants the Justice Department to be fully transparent. In Washington, Catherine Herridge, Fox News.
The next phase of the investigation into the deadly duck boat accident started Monday, when authorities raised the vessel that capsized and sank in Branson's Table Rock Lake, killing 17 on board. Divers from the Missouri State Highway Patrol plunged 80 feet into the lake and attached a rig sling system. Then a crane on a barge pulled the amphibious vehicle out of the water.
Everything on the bottom was photographed by the divers, and they conducted a survey on the bottom to assess its condition on the bottom. We know that condition, and that condition will be part of the investigation.
The duck boat was loaded onto a trailer and taken to a secure facility. It was transferred from the Missouri Highway Patrol to the National Transportation Safety Board for the duration of the investigation. The NTSB says it could take up to a year to complete.
They will be piecing together those witness statements and the condition of the boat.
Meanwhile, in Indiana, a community came together to remember the 9 members of the Coleman family who died in last week's accident. Dozens attending a prayer vigil at the Mount Olive Baptist Church in Indianapolis, where some of the family members worshiped. Funerals for 4 of 9 Coleman family members are set for Friday. According to the company's website, they're offering to pay all of the victims' medical and funeral expenses. In Washington, Ray Bogan, Fox News.
Rain and hail hitting El Paso County hard.
It's been a long time since we've been hit with this much water in such a short period of time, and that became a real concern for us.
Officials with CSPD emergency management team responding to closed streets for safety.
When it comes to flooding, is people trying to go through water.
Manitou saw the worst of it.
Oh, the storm came in, and as you can see, it dumped hail.
Getting out the snow shovels in July.
So bad for some of the businesses because they've had some damage and everything. We just got done cleaning all the water out of Patsy's because the floor was got about 2 or 3 inches of water on it.
Daniel Vince is retired and helps out Patsy's. He says the community has dealt with worse before.
When we're out there with shovels and everything, even some of the homeless grabbed the shovel and started helping because even though they're homeless, they still live here. So they have a little bit of pride.
A little bit of sunshine in the storm. We've got to laugh at this, right?
Well, that's all you can do.
St. Louis, home to the highest murder rate in America and Missouri's 1st Congressional District, have been represented by William or his son Lacy Clay since 1969. And now that dynasty is under threat from the left by Cori Bush, who rose to fame during the Ferguson riots.
What do you offer that Lacy Clay doesn't?
A fight, a fighter, an advocate.
Bush is just one of the far-left challengers across the country endorsed by Democratic socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has hit the campaign trail with another socialist.
And I have no doubt that what Alexandria did in the Bronx, James and you are going to do right here.
And has brought her message to St. Louis.
The movement for economic, social, and racial justice knows no zip code.
Running on a platform of Medicare for all, free college tuition, and the elimination of ICE, Cortez rocketed to fame by knocking off Democratic Congressman Joe Crowley, who some saw as a potential House Speaker.
All right, welcome back to the Voice of St. Louis.
Talk show host and former state Democratic official Mike Kelly says moderate Democrats need to stage a counter-revolution of their own to the center.
This true progressive stance that's popping up even in urban areas like here, the city of St. Louis, that's a message that doesn't sell in suburbia.
And voices outside the Democratic Party are sounding the alarm too. James Comey tweeted, "Democrats, please, please don't lose your minds and rush to the socialist left." In states like Missouri that went hard for President Trump, Democrats worry that incumbent 2018 Senate candidates like Clara McCaskill here are going to have to answer to Democratic socialist talking points, making them even less palatable to potential crossover voters. In St. Louis, Leland Vittert, Fox News.
If you'll follow this advice, I promise you, you'll live to an old age. Don't die.
Good words of advice from World War II veteran Sergeant Benner Hall. Benner was born on July 23rd of 1918, right here in Mesa, Arizona.
Went through school here. Graduated from Mesa High School in 1936. And we had the largest graduating class up to that time.
Benner turns 100 years old today, although you wouldn't be able to tell by his sharp memory of his time in war.
We're sent up when the Battle of the Bulge started. They sent the Third Army up to help the First Army and the British up in Belgium. So they sent us up to occupy a place where the whole Third Army had been.
Hall spent 3 years in the service before coming back here to Arizona, where he was a teacher for many years. He retired in the 80s. He had a very successful career and family. He and his late wife have 6 children.
25 grandchildren and 83 great-grandchildren and 1 great-great-grandson.
Although his birthday is today, the family didn't forget to throw him a birthday party. They had a major birthday bash on Saturday with more than 200 100 people.
As for birthdays to come, Hall says he thinks he'll be around for a few more.
I think another year or two would be long enough. But the way I feel, I don't hurt any place, but I just, you know, when you can't see, why you're not having much fun anymore.
Danielle Miller, Fox 10 News.
Whoa. Pretty amazing veteran story there. And speaking of veterans, this is Jackie.
Hello. A
veteran of our intern team here in D.C. And yes, we're going to say hey for just a second and then flash you over to Kansas City, Missouri, where they're holding the 119th VFW Convention. President Trump is speaking at that convention. Many veterans from all over the country gathering for it, and Kansas City is hosting it this year, so that's coming up shortly. We're seeing them set up right now. But Jackie, what are you working on today? I know you have a couple days left of your internship.
Yeah, I'm trying to pitch a couple stories.
Okay.
So we're gonna get those out there, but you know, nothing's really happening.
Okay, we'll see.
It's kind of slow today.
It's kind of. It's a rainy
slow.
day. It's humid. We're getting through the week. A lot of weather stories. Some stuff to investigate on that end.
Definitely a lot of flooding in my area.
Right. You're from
out in Great Falls.
Virginia.
Trees go down very easily, so I had to avoid some of my main routes today.
You did.
Rough, but.
Was there damage to property and trees down in your area?
There was definitely a couple of trees down on Riverbend,
yeah,
which is my normal street to go onto Georgetown Pike to head onto the highway, but you know, it wasn't too terrible. There's very low points on a lot of the roads back there, so water rushes over it really fast. So you just gotta like take it easy and
yeah. I don't know if any of you who are on or experiencing a ton of rain in your neck of the woods or wherever you are. I know Colorado, southern Colorado was hit with some hailstorms yesterday. It was not even as much rain, more hail, and they had to kind of clean that up. It wasn't snow, it wasn't rain. And some areas were hailed on, and then some were flooded as well. So it's really a mix and match. All areas of the country are kind of dealing with this right now. It's kind of a strange weather pattern, midsummer.
Yeah, very weird.
Depending on your area, it's strange. But let us know where you're watching from, speaking of that. And we are going to go over to this event now in Kansas City. They're prepping for the president to come up. He'll be making the main remarks coming up really shortly in the next few minutes. It's almost noon here on the East Coast, so we'll see what Jackie gets into today, and we'll check back in with you guys in a little bit too. Let's go over to that event.
We salute you for your service. These days, too many of our countrymen treat patriotism as some sort of cliche. For media elites and political power brokers, the idea of fighting to preserve our unique American freedoms is no longer necessary. It's in this postmodern America. Those of us who stand and place our hands over our hearts to honor our anthem and our flag are now viewed to be somehow archaic or even irrelevant. Perhaps that's because so few of them have mourned the loss of fellow comrades in arms as they're carried to their final resting place, draped in that red, white, and blue banner. We have. We've all done it. The NRA and the VFW believe that patriotism, love of country, and standing to salute our flag aren't flaws, they're virtues. Let me close with that thought. Let me close with that thought with one of our newest TV ads. Please watch. What makes America's military the most fearsome force on earth isn't just the weapons, equipment, or technology. It's the flag beneath which we serve. From the shores of Tripoli and Normandy to the jungles of Vietnam and the streets of Baghdad and Kandahar, America's armed forces fight with courage, selflessness, and noble purpose unmatched and undefeated. We've always known that behind our line stands every hope for human freedom on this earth. So let me say this to all who serve or who have served. If you want to continue your fight to keep freedom alive, there's a nearly 6 million member force that would be truly proud to add your name to our ranks. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you, and I look forward to joining you again, maybe at number 120. Semper Fidelis.
I would now ask your continued focus on the screens as we have a few more VFW videos.
You begin as one person, one commitment. You sign the dotted line. You become part of something greater. Your service begins. Your mission begins. Your circle grows. It expands and strengthens with each service member you meet. You deploy. You are supported by a network that understands. Your experiences are bonding. You are forever changed. You return, but it doesn't stop there. Your exit is only the beginning. Your network continues to grow. You are connected to a legacy of blood, sweat, and tears, and with them, your service continues. Your new mission: fight to preserve the rights our brothers and sisters have earned. As America's largest organization of combat veterans, we have the programs in place to accomplish this mission.
I am grateful to the VFW for the fight that they have mounted to make sure that each of my brothers and sisters in arms have their GI Bill benefit once they transition back to the civilian sector.
Over the past 3 years, our network of accredited representatives have helped veterans recover billions of dollars in earned VA benefits.
Because the VFW has a voice at both the state and the national level, we can do a really effective job at helping veterans and those still serving.
From enacting great change on Capitol Hill to provide needed support to America's veterans, service members, military families, and our local communities. Our strength lies within the heart of each individual member, and we're growing stronger every day.
It's critical to see and hear from every era of veteran as we're looking to do things in the community, do things legislatively. We need younger veterans to get involved, to amplify our voice.
We began as one. Now we are the millions who have served. We are the voice for veterans everywhere, and together we cannot be ignored.
Humana has a bold goal: to improve the health of the communities we serve by making it easier for people to achieve their best health. For the last several years, we have been working with community partners and physician practices to co-create solutions at a local level. Together, we are tackling chronic conditions and social determinants of health, such as loneliness, social isolation, and food insecurity, those barriers upstream from our traditional healthcare system. Why? Because good health is hard, and we cannot do this work alone. We are still learning. Help us move the needle on population health and be a part of something bold. Visit humana.com/bold goal for more information.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for the President, please bear with us, and we'll be back very soon. Thank you. We love you too.
Every American veteran has a connection to our hometown. For 118 years, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, headquartered right here in Kansas City, has fought to ensure America's veterans, service members, and their families get the support they've earned and deserve. Quality health care, compensation and benefits, veteran scholarships, financial grants, and so much more. We are the VFW, where no one does more for veterans, and we're proud to call Kansas City home.
5G. It's not just faster downloads. It's more than clean streaming video. 5G is a transformation. It's like going from black and white to color. It's a technology revolution that will transform every life on the planet. Imagine a doctor examining patients in remote, underserved communities, or a surgeon saving a life hundreds of miles away. Imagine a car that can drive you safely home from work and lets your home know when you've arrived. All that technology and more is out there. 5G is the ecosystem that will help it all grow and thrive, connecting people to everyone and everything they need to live their lives, redefining the world of entertainment, making dramatic breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, paving the way for a whole new era in healthcare. 5G is our future, and we believe it should be a brighter future for everyone. That's why our goal is 5G for all.
Deloge is a small town. It's got a population of around 4,000 people, and it's all pretty friendly here, very military friendly and veteran support. We get a lot of turnout on our events that we have, our parades, our barbecues, our charities, fundraisers we have, usually well attended by the local people. We do veteran programs. We work with the schools. We have 2 different school districts here we work in. People come in and say, I need help with this or that, help me get my benefits, whatever. So we help them out. Our quartermaster's grandson was born with cancer. So right now it's just up to $15,000 that we raised for him. It's really tough. So this is really great that we can help out like that. People come to us sometimes for that reason.
I'm still overwhelmed at the community support and how they supported the VFW and my little grandson.
At the National Convention, I went to the USAA booth. The lady there asked me, if you want to sign up for the drawing for a salute to your postal sweepstakes. I said, sure, why not? After that, I forgot about it. I got a phone call telling me that I won. Once I realized I did win the sweepstakes, it took me a few days to convince my commander I wasn't pulling a joke on him. Never really played a joke like that before, but we are pretty playful with each other sometimes.
We launched the Salute Your Post sweepstakes earlier this year as a way to recognize the local post community outreach efforts and to generate more awareness of USA in general. We didn't put any restrictions on what the money should be used for or could be used for. We allowed them to enter, and then the winner would be selected and use the money as they saw fit and select the post they wanted the money to go to. It was a great way for us to recognize the post and all the efforts they do in the communities. We're very proud to be able to support that.
It's nice that they're working with this small town community. I'm thinking with a big company like that, you know, that, oh wow, they're in the cities, they don't know much about us, but here they are, little old Deloge. If you look around, this is a very old historic building. We've already spent a lot of money upgrading different things, and it would be easy to put a lot of that money to use upgrading our building and getting it back where it should be.
We have some electrical issues that we're trying to work on, and this would help out with that. One wall along the banquet hall, plug in too many crock pots, it blows the circuit, so we're going to have to run a new circuit to that and try to make it better. A little bit of plumbing issues. It might be minor stuff, but it adds up. It's kind of expensive stuff. Some of this money will be used for that. This money would help us do more in the community, help the community out, as well as ourselves here.
There's a lot of things that we could make really positive use of this money.
I want to say thank you very much for USAA, for the money and for the opportunity, not just to us, but this reaches out across America. I mean, if they do this every year, then ain't no telling how many communities are going to be influenced by it, and it's huge, it's big. I want to say thank you. I don't know how to say thank you better, good enough, but it's going to be big. The money will be a huge benefit to the community as well as the Post.
For well over a century, the Veterans of Foreign Wars has carried the torch for veterans. Every year, every battle, fighting for what veterans have earned, for justice, for remembrance, for community, for country. The VFW remains a beacon of hope and strength through our nation's darkest hours. Over time, issues and hardships for veterans have taken different shapes, but one thing remains the same: the enduring support found in the VFW, America's largest and most established organization of combat veterans. The VFW has served countless generations, and today, its programs and services remain stronger than ever. But how and why did the great organization come to be?
In 1898, the Spanish-American War raging in the Philippines and Cuba came to an end. Veterans returned to America, many of them ravaged by diseases and horrifically wounded. Yet they were forgotten by the country they served, sent back with only their discharge pay of $15.60. Small groups of veterans began assembling in posts, demanding change. A country that creates veterans should be prepared to care for them. Veterans soon realized by banding together, one mighty group could be more powerful to fight their injustices. And on August 1st, 1914, this group became the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. At the same time, World War I began, and soon after, 4.7 million Americans answered the call to fight. Back home, women joined forces to support their country, founding the VFW Ladies Auxiliary, raising funds for troops and sending care packages overseas. While at war, service members lobbied for insurance benefits. And to assist returning veterans with obtaining their benefits, the Veterans Service Office in Washington, D.C. was established in 1919, making the VFW the first veterans organization to maintain a permanent location in our nation's capital. Many battles were to come.
The 1920s brought a time of remembrance for lives lost in World War I. The VFW Buddy Poppy found its roots during World War I, when Canadian Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae penned the poem, in Flanders Fields, after being inspired by a moment when he looked out over a field of soldiers' graves. The only color in contrast of the sorrowful white crosses was the red of the poppies, set in honor of the lives sacrificed. In 1922, the VFW adopted the buddy poppy as its official flower to symbolize the ultimate sacrifice made by those who defended our country. The VFW began distributing its buddy poppy just before Memorial Day in 1922, and since then, poppies continue to be hand-assembled by disabled veterans and are widely distributed on Memorial Day and other patriotic holidays to commemorate our veterans lost in battle. Well after World War I had ended, our veterans were still fighting to find jobs. Military families and widowed and orphaned children were left desperately struggling. To combat these issues, the VFW became involved in several veteran hiring initiatives nationwide. In the Detroit area alone, more than 9,000 veterans were employed as a result of a cooperative project with members of the local community. Further, a local millionaire cattleman learned of the VFW's work and donated 472 acres of his land near Eaton Rapids, Michigan. The idea to use the land to house military widows and families was born, and in March of 1925, a recent widow and her 6 children entered the VFW National Home for Children as its first residence. At this time, active duty military personnel were paid $30 a month. The VFW strongly backed a proposed bonus for World War I veterans that was passed by Congress, despite a presidential veto by Calvin Coolidge. This was a step in the right direction, but there was a problem. The 20-year paid-up endowment could not be touched when veterans needed it most. Near the same time, the VFW stood by families in distress from natural disasters, gifting $10,000 to Mississippi Valley flood victims in 1927, keeping the tradition of lifting up our nation in the most challenging times. The VFW then surpassed expectations by acting as a private corporation to negotiate with Russia in a difficult political climate to bring back the remains of 86 Americans during the Polar Bear expedition. As the stock market crashed in 1929 and the Great Depression devastated the country, veterans demanded their 20-year endowment be paid out, yet Congress ignored them.
The 30s were marked with setbacks, but also many triumphs. The VFW helped to create what is now the single largest integrated healthcare network in the country. The Department of Veterans Affairs, a major victory not just for the VFW, but for all of America's veterans. The VFW granted its first $300 scholarship to a Boy Scout, introducing supportive education that would multiply throughout the decades to follow. After putting in 3 years toward the collection of 5 million signatures, the Star-Spangled Banner was passed as the national anthem in 1931, a major victory. The VFW was growing larger and stronger, and proudly set its headquarters in Kansas City, making it centrally located to the veterans it serves. But a shadow loomed over service members and veterans who still received little support from their country. In 1932, veterans in the Bonus Army and the VFW marched for their World War I cash bonus, but faced rejection. The VFW-led Bonus Army charged through difficult protests as active duty servicemen used force to push veterans and their families out of sit-ins and marches for justice. Roosevelt took office and requested Congress cut budgets, hitting veterans and their pensions hard. The VFW fiercely organized and finally won the World War I cash endowment fight in 1936, even after the president's veto. As a result, some $2.4 billion were issued in bonus bonds to World War I veterans. The VFW then succeeded in their aim to have November 11th established as Veterans Day, ensuring a federal holiday to celebrate and honor the sacrifices of those who served. VFW membership continued to grow, nearing 200,000 veterans of World War I and the conflicts before. Then, a new generation of veteran was born.
Hi guys, whoever's on with us here on YouTube or on our website here at Fox 5 DC, we're watching this along with you in the newsroom in anticipation of President Trump coming up next to make the remarks at this 119th convention for the VFW. This is in Kansas City. President Trump is going to be joined by his nominee for Veterans Affairs, Secretary Robert Wilkie. And after his remarks, he'll be meeting with some veterans behind closed doors in a round table. So we'll try to bring to you the most of what we have, which should be this live camera here. We didn't get too much of a snippet of Air Force One earlier. I remember some of you were mentioning that just now in the chat, but we saw, we know that he landed there and should be coming up shortly on stage to make his remarks. So just hang out with us here on the stream. Let us know what you think. Any comments, anything in the chat is welcomed, and we're going to pop this back up and listen in.
On June 22nd, 1944, the president signed the VFW-supported Servicemen's Readjustment Act, also known as the GI Bill of Rights. Designed to assist veterans of World War II, the GI Bill set up new hospitals, granted low-interest mortgages, and paid for veterans to attend school to achieve a civilian career to support themselves. When veterans finally returned home after defeating the Axis powers in 1945, they were welcomed with better benefits and a plan to restart their lives. Membership soared to over 1.5 million. The VFW celebrated 50 years of advocating for veterans, ensuring their fair benefits, educational goals, and good health. The event garnered participation from many celebrities and high-profile individuals like Bob Hope, President Truman, Dinah Shore, and 1949 Buddy Poppy girl, Janice Page.
After the strife of the early to mid-40s, Americans hoped for peace and stability as the 50s began. However, the decade started with the Korean War, a war that was forgotten as quickly as it began. The VFW, however, did not forget. VFW posts across the nation rolled up their sleeves, hosting blood drives to get the desperately needed supply to the battle-injured, and successfully advocated for an emergency measure granting Korean War veterans with medical benefits, VA home loans, and extended GI Bill benefits. Ever supportive of Americans in times of floods, fires, and other natural disasters, the VFW began a cooperative disaster relief plan with the Red Cross. President Truman joined the VFW, adding to a presidential membership list to date of Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and George H.W. Bush. In another monumental move to strengthen patriotism and communities, the VFW became the sole sponsor of the Voice of Democracy program, an annual high school audio essay competition designed to make America's youth explore their patriotism and the significance of living in a democratic society.
After 2 years of construction, VFW member and President Dwight D. Eisenhower officially opened the new VFW Washington office in 1960, further strengthening the VFW's powerful influence on legislation. In 1964, the VFW Ladies Auxiliary contributed nearly $100,000 to earthquake victims in Anchorage, Alaska, as they suffered from the second largest earthquake to ever be recorded. A new war was soon waged, and another generation was asked to answer our country's call. The courage and resolve of Vietnam veterans and military officials was brutally tried. This generation of war veterans would face a backlash like never before. The VFW sprang into action with a barrage of initiatives to combat the negative treatment our Vietnam veterans received, to include the Support the Boys in Vietnam campaign and Operation Boost, resulting in hundreds of mayoral proclamations and even more media announcements calling on citizens to rally around the troops. The VFW asked Congress to pass a law and make it illegal to desecrate the United States flag. They were successful. VFW posts across the country mobilized to send care packages overseas, host parades for those returning, and provide support to the families left behind. The VFW demanded assessment of the Institute's failing veterans. VA hospitals were exposed at unacceptable standards for medical care. While the number of veterans increased by 8 million between the beginning of the 60s and end of the 70s, the amount of hospital beds in VA facilities had decreased. 9 VFW national commanders would visit the troops during the war.
In 1973, the Vietnam War came to an end, and the VFW asked for careful accounting of those Americans who did not return. The Vietnam War also proved to have lasting effects. Exposure to Agent Orange chemicals ravaged veterans' health. 14 medical conditions were connected to Agent Orange, including several types of cancer, respiratory disorders, heart disease, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The first service member to file for veterans' disability on account of PTSD was denied several times, but an appeal by the VFW called for benefits for veterans who suffered from PTSD as well as Agent Orange examinations.
Thanks to the VFW's grassroots write-in campaign, in June 1984, the Vietnam Veterans Dioxin Radiation Exposure Compensation Standards Act passed the Senate. Furthermore, the VFW's 10-year struggle for compensation for death or injury as a result from Agent Orange came to resolution in 1989. Membership surpassed 2 million. POW and MIA initiatives became a top VFW priority. Some 2,600 service members had still not been returned from Vietnam. 8,000 were still missing from Korea, and well over 70,000 still unaccounted for from World War II. Today, the VFW remains the only major veterans service organization to travel overseas annually in support of our government's full accounting mission. Updates were again needed for the GI Bill. The VFW called for increases to the allowances given for educational purposes and allowed members of the National Guard and Reserves to benefit from it for the first time. Proudly, the Montgomery GI Bill was passed. The spirit of philanthropy and remembrance was alive and well, as the VFW pledged strong support to the Vietnam Memorial, Vietnam Women's Memorial, Korean War Memorial, and the Statue of Liberty Restoration Fund. And the VFW Ladies Auxiliary was incredibly prominent throughout the decade, auxiliary membership reaching 750,000.
As the VFW reached its 10th decade, another major victory was achieved: service connection for specific conditions caused by Agent Orange. When the Gulf War began in 1990, the VFW wasted no time in showing its support. VFW members tied countless yellow ribbons in communities across the nation, keeping our men and women serving in the Gulf at the forefront of America's mind. It launched campaigns like Operation Hometown, where VFW representatives traveled to Saudi Arabia to distribute 100,000 care packages to troops, and Operation Homecoming, a troop support rally drawing some 75,000 service members and civilians. The VFW had the backs of those deployed to Somalia, sending gifts from home to ensure their morale remained high, and welcoming home those who participated in Operation Restore Hope with an annual membership. Just 2 years later, the VFW again brought a piece of home to those called to Bosnia, this time to include thousands of Christmas cards. During times of deployment, the VFW wanted servicemen and women to not only receive a package of care, but to remain as connected as possible to their loved ones. As such, in 1996, Operation Uplink was founded, a program providing free phone calls back home to relieve the struggles of being apart. By this time, VFW youth scholarships soared to over $2.5 million. The VFW celebrated the passage of several pieces of supported legislation. The Buddy Poppy celebrated its 75th anniversary. The VFW set forth a new military assistance program aimed to boost morale by hosting service members and their families at farewell and welcome home events. And relief funds to those stricken by natural disasters had reached $500,000. A worldwide celebration ensued as the VFW celebrated its 100th birthday. The VFW had developed into a multifaceted, global powerhouse for service members, veterans, and their families during its first century. But its resolve would soon be tested.
On September 11, 2001, an unfathomable attack occurred on American soil as planes crashed into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and a remote field in Pennsylvania. 55 known veterans and military and thousands of civilians lost their lives. America was under attack, and immediately the VFW leapt into preparations to support those who would become America's newest, greatest generation of war veterans. Those deployed to the Middle East to fight Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. The VFW facilitated the Adopt a Unit program, providing many Operation Uplink cards, audiobooks, and support messages to deployed troops. The VFW also distributed $120,000 equally among families of active duty personnel killed in the 9/11 attacks. The VFW developed an outreach network to set veterans up for success before they were done with military life. Through this pre-discharge program, men and women could file claims prior to separation from the military, ensuring timely, accurate benefits to start the course of financial stability. In another push for financial security, the VFW Unmet Needs Program was born in 2004. The program provides financial grants to service members and their families who faced unexpected financial difficulties as a result of deployment or other hardships related to military service. Unmet needs grants help cover basic life needs, such as mortgages and rent, home and auto repairs, insurance, utilities, food, and clothing. In August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama with the worst natural disaster trauma felt in years. The VFW pitched in, finding displaced veterans shelter and providing toll-free helplines. The VFW donated $750,000 to assist with rebuilding the devastated areas after Katrina and later Hurricane Rita. In other distressing news, groups of extremists began picketing funerals of fallen troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. The disrespectful act, not only toward the men and women who dedicated their lives to fighting after 9/11, but also their grieving families, would not be tolerated by the VFW. The VFW was successful in advocating for the passage of the Respect for America's Fallen Heroes Act, which banned protesters from military funerals. The VFW National Home for Children welcomed more families and expanded services to enable them to thrive and stay strong together. After years of evolution, the home now provided a wealth of support services for families, education and tutoring, daycare, food, healthcare, clothing, recreation, and dedicated case managers for guidance to reach family goals. In 2008, after a decade of determined advocacy to improve educational benefits for America's newest generation of war veterans, the VFW celebrated the signing of the post-9/11 GI Bill. The VFW's long-fought quest to ensure our nation's best have access to first-class education was a major milestone for both the VFW and for veterans. The VFW also guarded health of families through the family caregiver legislation, catalyzing its passage to law. This greatly expanded support programs for family caregivers of post-9/11 veterans.
A new decade brought with it several new opportunities for the VFW to support many worthy causes. $648,000 were donated to the construction of the Vietnam Veterans Education Center, $500,000 to the National Museum of the U.S. Army, and $20,000 sent to assist service members with family in Haiti after their devastating earthquake. The war in Iraq was declared over, but we still had troops in the field, and challenges for veterans remained ever present. An alarming number of veterans were unemployed. 165,000 Vietnam, 199,000 Cold War, 135,000 Persian Gulf War, and 211,000 Iraq and Afghanistan. The VFW strongly urged for swift passage of the Vow to Hire Heroes Act to expand programs and relieve these high unemployment rates. After a nationwide crisis in confidence and access to care, the VFW stepped in, driving the Veterans Access, Choice, and Accountability Act of 2014. The VFW National Commander called on Congress, pass a bill or don't come back from recess. Veterans continue to wait. The system remains broken, and very few employees who are responsible for this nationwide crisis in care and confidence have been held accountable. In response, the President signed the bill into law, providing the VA with an additional $15 billion in emergency funding to make sure veterans would not be forced to wait months for care. The VA started hiring more physicians, nurses, and clerical staff, and increased space to regain veterans' trust. In 2015, the Ladies Auxiliary changed its operation model to reflect today's military family by changing its eligibility requirements and dropping ladies from its name. Now, men and women of the auxiliary would work alongside VFW members to distribute millions in monetary aid for veterans and volunteer 9 million hours annually in VA medical centers and communities across the globe. In 2016, the VFW brought new national attention to another key issue, veterans' mental health. Through the nationwide and ongoing VFW Mental Wellness Campaign, the VFW reminds veterans they're not alone and works to combat the stigma of mental illness among our nation's defenders. The VFW remained close by to assist with veterans' most pressing needs. 2017 saw a record year in VFW unmet needs grants. Over $2 million in financial assistance grants were given to nearly 900 military and veterans families. In comparison, the previous year gifted $550,000 to 184 families. The VFW has contributed nearly $10 million to memorials recognizing the service and sacrifice of veterans from World War I through Desert Storm. And we are supportive of the new Global War on Terrorism Memorial to recognize almost 3 million Americans who have shouldered the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and elsewhere. In 2017, the Forever GI Bill was passed, improving on the post-9/11 GI Bill. This bill had an unparalleled impact on America's service members, veterans, and their families by expanding coverage to Purple Heart recipients who didn't have the requisite years of active service, veterans who attended schools which closed abruptly, involuntarily activated reservists and Guards members, and surviving family members. The 2017 Forever GI Bill also eliminated the 15-year use or lose limitation. Now veterans have a lifetime to use their GI Bill benefits.
From its humble beginnings, the VFW has demanded change and fought for improved quality of life for veterans, service members, and their families after war in every way. Now, well into its second century of service to others, the VFW remains a pillar of support in communities around the world and a guiding example to America's youth. The VFW propels our country's military personnel forward and stands by with a close watch on legislation that affects them. The VFW unites a nation, and today remains stronger and more relevant than ever to every American who has put on the uniform of our great nation. Creating change is tough work, but no one is more prepared to work harder to make change happen than the VFW. When the next issue arises for those who have fought for this country's freedom, the VFW will continue to fight alongside them like we have since our inception, because no one does more for veterans.
Where do we go now? Where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? Oh, where do we go now? Where do we go? Where do we go now?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you please be seated, clear the aisles. The sergeants have strict orders of anybody wishing to take pictures of the president. We know that everybody would like, but we'd like to have you stand by as close to your seat as possible. The aisles will be unrestricted, and he should be out real shortly. So please, a little movement around here during his speech. But thank you very much for waiting for him. And like I said, we expect in about 3 minutes or so.
Goodbye, Norma Jean. I never knew you at all. You had the grace to hold yourself, but those around you crawled. They crawled out of the woodwork, and they whispered into your brain. They set you on the treadmill, and they made you change your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. And I would have liked to know you, but I was just a kid. Your candle burned out long before your legend ever did. Loneliness was tough, toughest role you ever played. Hollywood created a superstar, and fame was the price you paid. Even when you died, oh, the press still hounded you. All the papers had to say was that Marilyn was found in the news. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. And I would have liked to know you, but I was just a kid. Your candle burned out long before your legend ever did. Goodbye, Norma Jean. Though I never knew you at all, you had the grace to hold yourself while those around you crawl. Goodbye, Norma Jean. From a young man in the 22nd row who sees you as something more than sexual. more than just our Marilyn Monroe. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. And I would have liked to know you, but I was just a kid. The candle burned out long before the legend ever did.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage VFW National Commander Keith Harmon.
Thank you. We're grateful for your service and your that's not mine. It is a great way to start off. What a better way to bring greetings to the President of the United States. And they took my introduction, so it is with a great deal of pleasure and honor for me to introduce the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Give him a
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. And thank you also to Commander Harmon. We're grateful for your service, for your leadership, and this incredible organization. That's what it is. It's incredible. I'm honored to be here today in Kansas City, Missouri, to pay tribute to the men and women who make freedom possible. Kansas City, and what a special place, what a special group of people. The veterans of foreign wars
You people should be very proud of yourselves. I want to personally thank each and every one of you who has served our country in uniform, defended our nation in battle, and protected our great American flag. Thank you. I also want to recognize a great Kansas City legend who I met today at the plane, somebody that I've been a fan of for a long time, a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame, George Brett of the Kansas City Royals. Where's George? He's around here someplace. I said, George, how many years? 20. What was your batting average? 305. I said, that's pretty good. 305 for 20 years. Special guy. I want to thank a true patriot, your executive director, Bob Wallace, along with your outstanding national auxiliary, President D. Gilroy. Thank you, D. Thank you. And congratulations to VFW's incoming leadership, B.J. Lawrence and Sandy Kriebel. Where are they? Great. Great. Congratulations. We're also joined by our brand new VA Secretary, Robert Wilkie. He's going to be fantastic, who was just confirmed by the Senate last night with an overwhelming vote. The only ones actually that voted against him were all of the people, super lefts, that are running against me in 2.5 years. Every one of them. If you want to know who's running, just take a look at Wilkie's score, because every single one of them, there'll be probably quite a few more, but in the Senate, that was it. But what a great vote, and he's going to do a fantastic job. There's been nothing more important to me. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I also want to thank our acting VA Secretary, Peter O'Rourke, for doing such a fantastic job in the meantime, holding down the fort until Wilkie got approved, and Peter is going to be joining the whole team, and they are doing numbers, and they are doing a job with choice and with all of the other things that we've gotten approved. They're doing some job for our vets. It was a very important commitment that I made to you during the campaign, and we're fulfilling that commitment. Several terrific members of Congress are here today as well, great friends of mine. They've helped me so much. We're joined by Kevin Yoder from Kansas. Incredible guy. Kevin Yoder, what an incredible guy. And members of Missouri's congressional delegation, Vicky Hartzler, Billy Long, Jason Smith, along with your state's Attorney General. Hopefully, we need him so badly. Hopefully, your new senator to be Josh Hawley. We need Josh badly. Josh, thank you. In fact, Josh, do me a favor, come up here just for a second. Just shake my hand. This guy is a special man. Come here, Josh. Come here.
Well, it's an incredible honor to be here today. Thanks to all of you for your service and what you mean to this country. But how about the leadership of President Donald Trump? What do you think? You know, when I think about President Trump, there's one word that comes to mind. That word is courage. Do you agree? How many people over the years have said that they'll do this or they'll do that, but there's one guy who had the guts to actually fulfill his promises, the guts to move our embassy to Jerusalem, the guts to actually stand up against our enemies overseas, the guts to put conservatives on the Supreme Court of the United States, and that's Donald Trump. You know, the president always says we're at a turning point moment as a country. It's a critical time for our country, and he's providing the leadership that this country needs as we lead the world into this new century. And now I tell you what, I think he needs reinforcements in Washington, D.C. Do you agree with that? So let's do this. Let's show our appreciation again for President Trump and the leadership that he is giving to this country, and let's redouble our efforts and recommit ourselves to standing together, working hard, and making America great again.
Wow. Goodbye, folks. That was great. What a great young man. Before going any further, I want to take this moment to send our prayers to the victims of the tragic boat accident that took place in your great state last week. And I have to tell you, the whole world was watching that. We lost 17 beautiful souls, including 9 members of one family, and babies for whom life was just beginning. Their lives were cut short, but they and their loved ones will never, ever be forgotten. A tragedy. We will hold their memory close to our hearts. I want to thank your governor, Mike Parson, friend of mine, a great person, for his leadership during this terrible tragedy, along with the Coast Guard and all of the first responders who were incredible. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next year will mark the 120th anniversary of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the oldest major veterans organization in our country. That's pretty good, right? For more than a century, the VFW has represented American heroes who promoted American values, and they did so with honor. You are the universal symbol of the patriotic pride that beats loudly in every single American heart. We don't apologize for America anymore. We stand up for America. We stand up for the patriots who defend America. And we stand up for our national anthem. We're putting America first again, and we are seeing the incredible results. We're destroying the bloodthirsty killers known as ISIS, almost gone. We're calling the threat by its real name, a name that wasn't mentioned for a long time. It's called radical Islamic terrorism. That's what it is. You have to know your enemy before you can defeat your enemy. Earlier this year, I recognized the true capital of Israel, as Josh said, Jerusalem, where we just opened the American embassy. They thought it would never be named, and after it was named, they thought it would never get built. And I built it within 4 months. How about that one? You know that story. 4 months. They came to my office. They had a document to be signed, $1 billion for the embassy. I said, $1 billion? They didn't have a site. They didn't know anything. And our great ambassador to Israel called David Friedman, who's a very successful lawyer in New York City, one of the most. And he said, you know, we could do it a lot faster. We have a great site. We have a building already on the site. We could renovate the building quickly, and we could open the embassy if you'd like to do that, sir. I said, how much would it cost? He said, $150,000. I said, what? What? He said, I think we can do it in 4 months. So we're talking about $1 billion Maybe in 20 years, maybe never, probably never happens, right? We know what goes on. Besides that, I'd rather build ships or I'd rather build something else if we can save the money. If we can save that money, let's use it wisely. So I said, David, let's not do 150. Let's do how about 400,000 and make it nicer. And it's beautiful. It just opened and it is beautiful. So we're many years ahead of schedule. And I understand, frankly, every president for the last many presidents has said, we're going to open our embassy in Jerusalem. And then they never did it. They all failed. They never did it. And I understand why, because when it came time and when people were hearing rumors about it, I was inundated from calls of every leader from all over the world, imploring me, even demanding that we not do it. To a point where I never took their calls unless I called them back after I did it. You know, it's one of those jobs. Let me call it back. I was getting calls from kings and presidents and dictators. I was getting a call from everyone. And when I knew what it was about, I'd say, tell them I'll call them next week. Then I called them and I said, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. Well, it's too late. Told them. But I understand why they didn't do it, because there was tremendous pressure. We did it. We're proud of it. It's there. Enjoy it. And by the way, the biggest fan may very well be the evangelicals. They wanted that built. They wanted that there. So we're very proud of it. We've removed unnecessary restraints on our warfighters in Afghanistan. Those who risk their life and limb for our country, they deserve rules of engagement that give them the best opportunity to finally defeat the enemy. And we're making, for the first time in years, we're making a lot of progress in Afghanistan. I withdrew the United States from the horrible, one-sided Iran nuclear deal. And Iran is not the same country anymore. That I can say. And we'll see what happens. But we're ready to make a real deal, not the deal that was done by the previous administration, which was a disaster. We're also pursuing the denuclearization of North Korea and a new future of prosperity, security, and peace on the Korean Peninsula and all of Asia. New images just today show that North Korea has begun the process of dismantling a key missile site, and we appreciate that. We had a fantastic meeting with Chairman Kim, and it seems to be going very well. I know we're joined today by many incredible veterans of the Korean War. Thank you for your courageous service. As you may know, we're also working to bring back the remains of your brothers in arms who gave their lives in Korea, and I hope that very soon these fallen warriors will begin coming home to lay at rest in American soil. That's starting the process. At the very end of our meeting, I said to Chairman Kim, good relationship, good feeling. I said, I would really appreciate if you could do that. He said, it will be done. So I was very happy, and I think that process is starting fairly soon, we hope. Because we believe in no American left behind. We believe in that, right? No American left behind. I want to thank the VFW for your devotion to our fallen heroes, unknown soldiers, prisoners of war, and those missing in action and their families. No one better understands the horrors of war than the people in this room. It is the warrior who bears the scars of battle and who prays most fervently for peace. That is why we remember George Washington's advice that the best way to preserve the peace is to be prepared for war. And that is exactly what we do all the time. My thinking is always on military and military strength. That is why I'm proud to report that we are now undertaking the greatest rebuilding of our United States military in its history. We have secured $700 billion for defense this year and $716 billion next year, approved. We're ordering 147 new F-35 Lightning fighters. This is an incredible plane. It's stealth. You can't see it. So when I talk to even people from the other side, they're trying to order our plane. They like the fact that you can't see it. I said, how would it do in battle with your plane? They say, well, we have one problem. We can't see your plane. That's a big problem. Stealth, super stealth, the best in the world. We make the best military equipment in the world. Also, remember this, jobs. We're ordering 239 Apache and Black Hawk helicopters. You know what they are. They're incredible. 19 major naval vessels and nearly 8,000 Humvees. And these will be Humvees that are used by our great soldiers, not handed out to everybody like you've been reading about in the past. All made right here in the USA. And we're adding nearly 30,000 new soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And I've directed the Pentagon to begin the process of creating the 6th branch of our military. It's called the Space Force. We are living in a different world, and we have to be able to adapt. And that's what it is. A lot of very important things are going to be taking place in space. And I just don't mean going up to the moon and going up to Mars, where we'll be going very soon. We'll be going to Mars very soon. But from a military standpoint, space is becoming every day more and more important. I'm also thrilled to say that we have secured for our military service members and their families the largest, you don't really want it. You're too patriotic for this. The largest pay raise in almost a decade. Largest pay raise. You don't want it. You don't want it. Nah. Anybody willing to give it up for the sake of your country? Okay, keep it. You deserve it. You really do. It's been a long time since you've gotten a raise. You deserve it. My administration is committed to ensuring that our warfighters have the tools, the resources, the firepower that they need to defeat our enemies with overwhelming force. Hopefully, we will never have to use the kind of power that I'm building and helping to build for you. Hopefully, people will look at us and they'll say, let's pass. Let's pass. America is a peace-loving nation. We do not seek conflict, but if conflict is forced upon us, we will defend ourselves. And if we must, we will fight, and we will do nothing but win. As the great General MacArthur once said, in war, there is no substitute for victory. Victory. We're also committed to ensuring that when our warriors return home as veterans, they receive the best care anywhere on earth. Since taking office and working alongside of the VFW, and by the way, your representatives have done an incredible job on helping us with the VA. Complicated subject, so many different things. They helped us so much because we put in legislation. I said, let's make sure it's legislation that's good and that works, not legislation that's obsolete before we even get it. If we're going to fight like hell to get everybody to approve it, let's get approved what's good. And we've enacted some of the largest VA reforms in the history of the VA. Probably the largest. Last year I signed into law the landmark VA Accountability Act, which nobody thought we could get approved. Nobody. We're good at getting things approved. Nobody thought. Now, when a bad person, maybe a federal employee in this case, but somebody bad mistreats or neglects or abuses our great veterans in their time of need, we can turn to them, look at them in the eye and say, you're fired, get out, get out. Before there was nothing you could do, you had to live with these people. You've gotten rid of a lot of people over the last year. Only the bad ones. The good ones we cherish. We cherish the good ones. But we had some bad apples, and they're gone. As promised, we established the White House VA hotline, and every VA medical center now offers same-day emergency mental health care, something very important. We're greatly expanding telehealth and walk-in clinics so our veterans can get anywhere at any time. They can get what they need. They can learn about the problem, and they don't have to necessarily drive long distances and wait. We are also, it's been a very big success. We're also processing veteran disability claims more quickly than ever before, by far. The VA has implemented the decision-ready claims process where claims can be completed in under 2 weeks. We're striving for 1 day, but under 2 weeks. It used to be many, many months. Last year, I signed legislation. It's amazing. I just said last year. It's been a long time already, isn't it? Huh? That was some campaign, wasn't it? I signed legislation so that veterans can use their GI Bill education benefits at any point in their lifetime. It's a big difference. They never expire, so vets can get the education they need when it is right for them. And with the VFW's tremendous help, we passed Veterans' Choice, the biggest thing ever, the biggest thing. That's got to be the biggest improvement you can have. So now, if you can't get treatment that you need in a timely manner, people used to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 8 weeks. They couldn't get to a doctor. You will have the right to see a private doctor immediately, and we will pay for it. And you know what? It's very, very cost effective, and thousands and thousands of lives are going to be saved, and your quality of life is going to be so much better. So you don't have to wait online for 2.5 weeks to see a doctor like in the past. Veterans' Choice has been passed. And my administration also understands that we cannot be a safe country if we are not a prosperous country. We have to think of ourselves. You have to see these trade deals I'm working on. They're a disaster. We're losing hundreds of billions of dollars with individual countries a year. And they're sticking. You got to stick it out. We got to fight it. Nobody else fought it. I went to some of the countries. I said, how did it get so imbalanced? They said, nobody ever called. They said, nobody ever called. They do whatever they wanted, and we just put up with it. Not any longer, folks, not any longer. Making tremendous progress. They're all coming. They don't want to have those tariffs put on them. They're all coming to see us. And the farmers will be the biggest beneficiary. Watch. We're opening up markets. You watch what's going to happen. Just be a little patient. They're all aiming at anybody that likes me. And they have lobbyists like nobody's ever seen. They have the best lobbyists ever put together. I was hearing and reading that they have some of the greatest lobbying teams ever put together. You've got to stop the president from putting tariffs on these countries and these companies that are ripping off the United States. You've got to stop him. Just remember, we're going to do something that, honestly, nobody else could do. Nobody else could do. We have a lot of... Thank you, darling. I like you, too. I like her. Thank you very much. That was good timing. We're now in the midst of a great economic revival. And it's for that reason that I chose this is the time. Last year, our country lost $817 billion with a B dollars on trade. We lost $817 billion. And people say, oh, could you do it this week? Could you get it done immediately? These countries have been ripping us off for decades. It doesn't take a week. It takes a little longer. But we're going to get it done. But just remember, we can't lose $817 billion. We rebuilt China. What the European Union is doing to us is incredible. How bad? They made $151 billion last year, our trade deficit with the European Union. They sound nice, but they're rough. They're all coming in to see me tomorrow. They're all coming to the White House. I said, you have to change. They didn't want to change. I said, okay, good. We're going to tariff your cars. They send millions of cars. Mercedes, all of them. BMW, so many cars. I said, we're going to have to tariff your cars. They said, when can we show up? When can we be there? Would tomorrow be okay? No, folks, stick with us. Stick with us. Amazing. But remember, they have the biggest, best, strongest lobbyists, and they're doing a number. Just stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news. I mean, I saw a piece on NBC today. NBC, not just CNN. CNN's the worst, but I saw a piece on NBC. It was heart-throbbing. They were interviewing people. They probably go through 20, and then they pick the one that sounds like the worst. But they went through a group of people. In fact, I wanted to say, I got to do something about this Trump. Terrible. And that piece was done by the lobbyists and by the people that they hire. It was a total setup. This country is doing better than it's ever done before economically. This is the time to take off the ripoff of tariff. We have to do it. You know, other countries have tariffs on us. So when I say, well, I'm going to put tariffs on them, they all start screaming, he's using tariffs. China charges us, when we make a car, 25% tariff. We charge them 2.5%. Other than that, it's a fair deal. Okay? Similar things with other countries, like the European Union. They're a big abuser. But it's all working out. And just remember, what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening. And I'll tell you, I have so many people that are so in favor, because we have to make our country truly great again. Remember, make America great again, and then in 2.5 years, it's called keep America great. So the way we keep America great is to make at least reasonable. I'm not saying at least reasonable, at least fair trade deals, not stupid trade deals like we've put up with for 25 years. So we're changing it, and we're changing it rapidly. Over the last little more than a year and a half, we've created 3.7 million jobs since election. African American, Hispanic, and Asian American. Unemployment has reached the lowest levels ever recorded in our country's history. The lowest levels. Unemployment, lowest level. Remember, I used to say, I said it here, what do you have to lose? I was right. Women's unemployment recently achieved a 65-year low, lowest in 65 years. You'll like this one. Veterans' unemployment has fallen to the lowest level in almost 18 years. We're working to make it better, I'm sorry. You know, 18 years isn't so good when you hear history and 65 years. 18 years, and I'll guarantee within a month or 2 months that 18 will be even a much higher number. Take great care of our vets. Consumer, business, and manufacturing confidence has reached its all-time highs. Confidence is all-time high. We've cut a record number of job-killing regulations. No president, no matter how long they've been in office, even though we're only here for a short time, has cut anywhere near the regulations. And these are unnecessary. These are waste regulations. It would take 20 years to get approval to build a highway. We're trying to bring it down to 1 year. We have it down to about 2. We're trying to get it down to 1. And if it doesn't work, or if it's environmentally unsound, or there's something wrong, we're not going to approve it. But we're not going to take a process 20, 21 years and then raise your hand that it's not approved. We'll let you know in a period of a year or maybe 2. Right now it's at 2. We're trying to bring it down to 1. We passed the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history, biggest in history. And unfortunately, we had tremendous opposition for lowering your taxes from Claire McCaskill. She voted against. Unbelievable. And she wants to now end it so that you pay more. Did you figure this one out? I don't know. Is that good? You figure that one out. In the first quarter of this year alone, American companies repatriated a record of nearly $300 billion. This is in the first quarter. And it's coming back into our country with our companies and our employment and building plants and factories and headquarters in our country where it belongs. We think the number, and this is all because of our tax reform and tax cuts, we think the number will be close to $4 trillion coming back into our country. Money that would never have been seen by you or us or me. And just like I promised, we're confronting the unfair trade deals, and we are doing it like nobody's ever done because our workers have been cheated, our companies have been cheated, they've stolen our wealth, they brought it to other countries. As you know, I campaigned on that issue. It's very close to my heart. I understand that issue better than anybody. I don't like it when they close a factory in your state or a plant in your great state, and they move it to another country, and they make the product. They fire all of you, and they make the product, and they send it back into our country to be sold tax-free. I don't like that. I don't like it. We're stopping it. We're stopping it. Because companies are moving back into our country like never before. You saw Chrysler announced, many are announcing. Japan's just announced 2 big companies are opening up in Michigan. We have a lot of companies coming back into our country. You haven't seen that for 25 years. You haven't seen it. And we need workers because our unemployment rate at 3.8% is so low. Now we're taking people off the rolls and we're training people, but we need workers. And that's why I want people coming in. You know, people don't say this and they certainly don't report it, but I want people coming into our country, but I want them coming in based on merit. I want the merit system so they can help us. Merit. The forgotten men and women of our country are forgotten no more. The Democrats are trying to find out who are these people that came out to vote? Where did they come from? Remember that? Where did they come from? Now they know, but they're not going to the Democrats who are going so far left that nobody can believe it. They want open borders and crime's okay. We want strong borders and we want no crime. Other than that, we're very similar. Other than that, we're very similar. We also know that to be a strong nation, we have to have these strong borders. We cannot send our military to confront threats abroad, only to allow those same threats to cross our borders and to threaten us right here at home. We help other countries protect their borders, and we don't protect our own borders. How about that? We're fighting every day to secure our borders, and we're doing a great job. But we're not given the tools. We have the worst laws in any country ever in history. We have catch and release. You catch them. And now we say, give me a name. Oh, good. Come back in a couple of years, we'll take you to court. You're released. This is the policy of fools. Catch and release. You catch even a criminal. You catch a bad person. You release the person as soon as you catch them. We have to end it. Despite that, we're doing a great job. And ICE. Oh, ICE. Thank goodness for ICE. Because we have some of the worst drug dealers, terrorists, criminals, and MS-13 gang members. And we're either throwing them the hell in jail or throwing them out of our country, and ICE goes up there and they walk in like it's another day in the office. Thank goodness for ICE. The Democrats want to abandon ICE. They want to end ICE. They're too strong. I saw one of the people they're too strong. They're too strong. I think MS-13 is strong too. The only thing they understand is strength. They don't understand anything but strength. And ICE is tough and smart, and they track them down, and they stop tremendous amounts of crime. And these are great people, and they're not being treated properly. And the fact is, instead of supporting our ICE officers, many of these Democrat politicians who are really disciples of a very low IQ person, Maxine Waters, and perhaps even worse, Nancy Pelosi, they've launched vicious smears on the brave men and women who defend our communities. ICE officers work in dangerous conditions to protect our communities. And more than a third of ICE officers happen to be veterans themselves. About a third. But Democratic politicians want to abolish ICE. They want to see open borders. Can you imagine? You know, every once in a while you'll hear something, and usually you understand, like in deal making, you always have to understand the other side. When you hear open borders, when you hear get rid of ICE, when you hear some of the things that they're proposing, it's like you can't even understand it. Can you imagine? Open borders, you'd have millions of people pouring into our country. Millions and millions of people. many people that you don't want in our country. But you would have millions of people pouring into our country. The crime would be unbelievable. And they want to get rid of the crime fighter on top of everything else. Open the border and get rid of your crime fighters. You don't understand it. Nobody understands it. But I hope they keep it up, because we're going to have a lot of fun in 4 months, and we're going to have a lot of fun in 2020 running against that. My administration will always stand proudly with the heroes of ICE and Border Patrol. They are heroes. And I want them to know that we thank them. The veterans of foreign wars understand better than anyone the importance of honoring those who put service to their fellow citizens before they put service to themselves. That's both at home and abroad. Here with us today is an extraordinary man who embodies the highest ideals of loyalty, patriotism, and service. He is a World War II veteran from the great state of Pennsylvania. That's another one we won. We won you guys by 20 points, of course. I'm not going to bring that up. I'm not going to tell that to George Brett. 20 points. Many of you know him well. He's a lifetime member of the VFW. Sergeant Alan Jones. Where's Alan? Where's Alan? Sergeant. Should we bring him up? Come on, Alan. He's only 94, and the Secret Service made him walk about 100 yards out of his way, but that's okay. That's okay.
I just thank you. This is one of the highlights of this 94-year-old man. I just want to tell you a few things, may I, Mr. President?
I've got time.
I had 4 brothers serve in World War II. My oldest brother was lost off the coast of Italy. Many times I just wished that he could come back to the land of free and the home of brave again. I've given to the veterans of foreign wars 70 years of my life. Thank you. My wife's with me today, but she's not here. She's not feeling well. And my children are watching me today, hopefully, to know that their dad got to stand beside the President of the United States with the President. Mr. President, I want to ask you something. I've been told that I could never enter the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. I'm going to be 95 years of age, April 11th of next year. Hopefully, that you will allow me to bring my family into the Oval Office to meet you.
Anytime you wish.
One last thing, Mr. President. I want to tell you, Mr. President, this group knows not to give the mic to Alan Q. Jones when he's at a state convention or the national convention. I asked you to autograph this picture personally because this was taken to you, with you, when you were running for election as the President of the United States.
Thank you. Beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Let me have a good one here, Alan. That's so beautiful. I'm going to say up here. Okay, here, I'm going to do this. You got it. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, man.
God bless you, Mr. President, and I wish you well in the future. Thank you, Jim.
I started to get a little bit concerned when he was finishing. Well, this is the president that will have you in the Oval Office, so all of my people back there, they're working it out already, okay? With honor. And we pay tribute not only to Alan, but to all of the heroes of the greatest generation. And I'd like to take this moment to recognize every World War II veteran in the audience today. Each of you is a national treasure. It's true. We will never forget what you did for us, ever. From Bunker Hill to Belleau Wood, from Iwo Jima to the Incheon landing, Americans have stormed into danger, stared down evil, and stood strong and tall for God, country, and freedom. Anytime we see an American in uniform, from the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, or Coast Guard, our hearts swell with pride. And anywhere those uniforms appear, our enemies tremble with fear because they know there is no greater force for peace and justice than the United States military. To every single member of the VFW, because of your service, your courage, and your example, we are restoring the dreams and the glory and the greatness of America. We will never give in. We will never give up. And we will never stop fighting for our country, our flag, and our freedom. Together, we will keep on fighting, and we will keep on winning as one people, one family, and one nation under God. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our veterans, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it, guys. President Trump in Kansas City, Missouri for the VFW convention. Pretty good stuff there, right, Jackie? Yeah, I loved the veteran, the World War II vet, talking about his brothers. Pretty amazing. Definitely tugs at your heartstrings, and it was interesting to see kind of them have that conversation, and definitely bold of him to be like, hey, I'm going to have my 95th birthday.
I mean, hey, you got the opportunity to be up there. You got to seize the moment.
Yeah, these events always slightly campaign-like in nature for his speech, but definitely hit a lot of the points that we expected him to talk about in Kansas City, and there you go. You see that wide kind of pan out as we kind of move away from this event shortly. We are back in the newsroom here at Fox 5 DC, guys. I'm Molly Nevola on the stream. This is Jackie, our intern. Hey. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Let us know what you think of the stream and what you thought of the speech today. That pretty much concluded it. It took up a lot of our time here today for our stream, so we'll probably roll it down from here, but definitely some good stuff. President Trump was to be joined by Robert Wilkie, who was just confirmed in the Senate yesterday as the new Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and then now he is going off stage to have a closed doors roundtable with some of the veterans who are in attendance. You can see it was quite a lot in attendance there, filling up that room in Kansas City. So
it's a big audience.
Definitely.
There's a lot of veterans still there too.
Totally, right? The
veterans
area
in general, like they definitely expect and deserve a lot of respect
for
that
sure
too. So.
Yeah.
That veteran asking to go to the Oval Office, I mean, that was...
Wasn't that amazing?
Was
yeah. Definitely.
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah. His family. So that'll be neat to kind of look for that next April to see when they do arrange that.
Right.
Behind closed doors, he'll have his team kind of arrange that for that one. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out on the stream today, and thanks for joining us. As always, you can follow us on all of our handles. They're at the bottom of your screen, Fox 5 DC. We're here on our website and on YouTube during the weekdays from 11:30 to around 2 o'clock. We'll go into the next couple of afternoon hours just to see what else happens. This was kind of our main event here. Our other web producer, Sam, will come over and kind of host the next portion of our stream if we have anything else crop up. But definitely keep us in mind when you're hanging out on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our channel by clicking the red button that says subscribe on your screen, and we hope to see you another time. Jackie, did you have a good day today?
Oh, it was very relaxing.
Good.
Not much going on, but this was really interesting to watch.
Yeah,
so I'm glad I did.
It's a quiet day, but we like to pull in some of the national events. Of course, this one slated for this afternoon, and then a couple of other stories that we're looking out for. President Trump will fly back tonight. We know that today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in Palo Alto, California at Stanford University along with Secretary Mattis. They were hosting a press conference with the Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs. So we had a little bit of that we watched, but didn't kind of pop it over there We'll pull this down for now, though. All right, guys. Well, that will round out our sort of hour here. We're going to give you a nice bump shot of the Capitol Dome on this rainy day here in Washington, and we'll catch you next time here on Fox 5 Live. Okay? Bye. Bye, guys.
to have a meeting, and we hope there will be more Democrats who may have an open mind on this nominee to actually sit down and meet him. Just one report from home. You may have noticed the back and forth with some of the demonstrators in my hometown of Louisville over the abolition of ICE. There was an exchange of op-eds in the local newspaper over the weekend that kind of illustrate the differences. I pointed out that ICE does very useful work. I also pointed out what a socialist is, because I think there are a lot of people in America now who don't even remember socialism. We thought it was kind of a relic on the ash heap of history decades ago. That was followed by an op-ed response from one of the leaders of the demonstrators pointing out proudly that he was far left, that he was a socialist, that capitalism had done a lot of damage to the world, and that we ought not to have any borders at all. People ought to just be able to freely flow back and forth between one country and another without apparently any interference. What is, I think, doubly shocking is it seems that some of our colleagues in the Senate who have their eye on the White House seem to be adopting the view that we ought to get rid of ICE and therefore have no border security at all. So I think this is going to end up becoming quite a significant issue in the fall election and certainly affect how we go forward on immigration in the future.
It's been 2 weeks since Judge Kavanaugh was announced for the vacancy left by the retirement of Justice Kennedy. You'll notice some of the initial attacks on his integrity and on his record didn't do so well among the fact checkers who gave him multiple Pinocchios on at least 2 occasions I can think of. And now the movement has been to Senator Schumer telling his Democrats, don't meet with the judge until we work out a deal on document production. Well, I'm glad that Senator Manchin, as the leader said, is not listening to Senator Schumer in that regard, and that I hope other Democrats will follow suit. But whatever the demand for documents will be, you can be guaranteed it won't be enough to satisfy the 20 Democrats who've already come out against the nomination. And there will be a huge document production, I predict, by the time we have a hearing in front of the Judiciary Committee. But there will be always requests for more and more and more without regard to any relevance to the nominee whatsoever. They even want documents that came across his desk, whether or not he actually had anything to do with creating those documents or creating input into those documents. So this is where the delay game is going to be played by our Democratic colleagues. They're going to try to put it off as long as possible, but the leaders made clear we're going to have this before this vote on the nomination, before the midterm elections. And my hope is that we'll get the nominee confirmed in the Judiciary Committee and on the floor of the Senate in time for him to begin the October term of the Supreme Court, the first Monday in October. That would be, to me, the target date.
As the leader mentioned, this week we're going to process 4 more appropriation bills here in the Senate, bringing the total to 7, which is over halfway there. And we continue to make progress on all those bills at the same time that we've got other issues, other pieces of legislation that are moving through as well. We've got a defense bill that's in conference, a farm bill that's in conference. We hope to have up FAA, opioid, water resources, a whole range of legislative issues in addition to nominations in the next few weeks, and all of which have a very positive impact on the people that we represent. And there are a couple of recent data points that came out. In the first quarter of this year, it was reported that over $300 billion was repatriated back in the United States. This is something that we said would happen as a result of tax reform when we made changes to the international rules that apply to multinational corporations, that they would start bringing those profits back in the United States. In the first quarter of this year, over $300 billion. The Heritage Foundation has just come out with a study that says thanks to tax reform, the average family of 4 in this country over the course of the next decade will have a higher income of $44,000. That's additional $44,000 in their take-home pay as a result of the passage of tax reform. And so while the Democrats play delay games with the Supreme Court, with Judge Kavanaugh, and try to obstruct other pieces of our agenda, we're just going to continue to keep our heads down, stay in our lanes, and keep getting the work done for the American people.
The lead editorial in the New York Times today was about the Endangered Species Act, and they imply that it is working quite well, when in fact I'm working with a bipartisan group of governors from the Western Governors Association, 19 states and 3 Western territories, all of whom say that that the status quo is not good enough. It is not doing well in terms of serving the species. For far too long, a species is listed on the put on the endangered species list, which is essentially putting it in the hospital, putting it in intensive care, putting it on life support without any plan for recovery in place, to the point that for every 100 species that have been put on the list, only 3 have recovered enough to get off the list. And as a doctor, I'll tell you, if every 100 people I put in the hospital, only 3 recovered enough to get out of the hospital, it'd be time for another doctor, a new doctor. The people that really know the best about what to do are the governors, the people in the states, the people who have on-the-ground experience with the species, not Washington making decisions about what's happening in the states. And that's why I'm working with this bipartisan group of the Western Governors Association. When the Endangered Species law was passed, a bipartisan vote in 1973, states didn't have that much activity on the ground working with species, but they have expanded the spending and the personnel and the biologists and the professionals who know how best to do the work. I'm introducing legislation to that effect, and we want more transparency than we have now out of Washington, giving states more responsibility and the transparency that we know that people can no longer move the goalpost once a species has recovered, and then it's time to be removed from the list.
I spoke on the floor earlier today about the 17 lives that were lost last week in Branson, where a vehicle designed to work on both the land and the water didn't work on the water that day in a weather occurrence that was really unusual. I met Friday with the National Transportation Safety Board investigators, about 24 of which are in Branson, Missouri right now, and the Coast Guard. This is not the first kind of accident we've had, and that board is one of the boards that I think we often take for granted. 20 years ago, a similar thing happened in Arkansas, about 200 miles away on a different lake. So really the questions are, were the recommendations followed by the Coast Guard? Were they followed by the operator? Did the equipment work the way it was supposed to work? And was this act of God avoidable or unavoidable that all came together for an accident? But it also leads to another point. We've had 2 of the National Transportation Safety Board members on the docket and unconfirmed, 1 Democrat and 1 Republican, for months now. We're going to get that done later today. We pay a big price when we make it hard to get people confirmed to these jobs who've been nominated by the president out of committee, just waiting for what would normally be a routine thing to happen. So later today that will happen, and that board, for the first time in months, will be back to its full strength and full capacity for board members, one of whom always goes to every accident site to be available to do that.
Last night, the Senate confirmed the nomination of Secretary Wilkie to the Veterans Administration. A couple of days before that, I had the privilege of attending the opening of the Rocky Mountain Regional VA facility in Denver, Colorado. This is the facility that will be the crown jewel of the VA system, but took a lot of struggle, a lot of money, and a lot of years overdue and over budget to get done. Since that time, though, this Congress, the Republican majority, has led efforts to provide veterans with greater choice over where they get their health care, to make sure that we have greater accountability at the VA. So bad actors, those actors responsible for $1 billion in over budget and a decade in overdue time under construction, can be held accountable, giving the power of the VA, the Secretary, to fire and hold those people accountable who make bad decisions to the VA. And we've also made great reforms in how the VA is able to hire doctors, physicians to get onboarded quickly at the VA to meet the needs of the people. So this Republican Congress has done an incredible job of providing and following through on the promises that we have made to veterans. Tomorrow we'll have Secretary Pompeo before the Foreign Relations Committee, an opportunity for us to talk about our concern, continued concern with the aggressive posture that Russia has taken not only toward the midterm elections in 2016 going forward into 2018, but also a chance to talk about North Korea and the status of that. And I hope that we will have a discussion over U.S. airlines who are in the news today about to capitulate, cave in to China's demands that they treat Taiwan differently. And I hope that our U.S. airlines, U.S. companies will not fall victim or be victimized by Chinese bullying.
Yeah. Senator Cornyn, you talked about the target date to confirm Brett Kavanaugh's 1st of October. That said, would you possibly call the Democrats' bluff where they want all these documents and that would lead us into October in an effort to either keep the Senate here, keep those Democratic senators off the field in October, and try to time that confirmation as close to the election to make that a challenging vote for those Democratic senators?
Well, I'm hoping we can reach an agreement with the Democrats, and Senator Cornyn can address this, about what is reasonable and relevant to the nomination. I only stated the obvious, which is we're going to finish this nomination this fall. And so let there be no misunderstanding that there would be any kind of delaying tactic that would take us past the first Tuesday in November.
The administration's talking about spending something like $12 billion to help primarily farmers who've been hurt by the administration's tariff policies. I'm wondering if you think that's a good use of taxpayer dollars and if that's consistent with free market Republican style economics.
Yeah, I just heard about that. I'm going to have to take a look at it before I have anything further to say. Yeah.
What's your view on the merits of the White House invitation to President Vladimir Putin to come to the United States in the fall for a visit?
Well, I can only speak for the Congress. The Speaker and I have made it clear that Putin will not be welcome up here at the Capitol.
Leader McConnell, do you think it's appropriate for the White House to be threatening to revoke security clearances of former national security officials who are critical of the president?
Well, the clearance issue, I think, is a presidential prerogative, and I don't have any particular advice to give the president about clearances. Frankly, I didn't know until recently that some people actually keep a clearance once they leave the government. It's an interesting question. I'll look forward to seeing what the president decides on it.
Senator McConnell,
the president has tweeted, I know you often don't like to talk about his tweets, but he did tweet that he thought that Russia might be meddling in the upcoming election, but in favor of the Democrats. Do you think that's an accurate way to look at potential Russian interference?
Well, I think we all know the Russians interfered in the last election, and the question is, are they going to do it again? And I mentioned, I believe, a week ago today that Senator Rubio and Senator Van Hollen have a suggestion that might deter future interference in our elections, and we're open to looking at all of that. The Russians better quit messing around in our elections. I want to make that perfectly clear. The Russians better quit messing around in our elections. They did it the last time. They better not do it again.
Sir.
judge's records from his time as staff secretary for President Bush. But just listen to what Judge Kavanaugh said in 2010. When people ask me of my prior experiences, which of my prior experiences has been the most useful to me as a judge, I tell them all of them have been useful, and I certainly draw on all of them. But I also do not hesitate to say that my 5.5 years in the White House, especially my 3 years as staff secretary for President Bush, were the most interesting and in many ways the most instructive. That's Kavanaugh's own words. And so we have sent this letter to the Bush archivist. It's the same exact letter that Senators Leahy and then Sessions, ranking Republican, sent for Kagan. All we've done is change the words Kagan to Kavanaugh and Clinton to Bush. Same exact letter. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And for the president's press secretary to say this is unprecedented, to ask for documents, just defies reality. Bottom line, very simple. Are our Republican friends going to turn around and say that the nominee for the highest court in the land, with such immense power over the lives of Americans, doesn't need to release his White House documents? That hypocrisy is nothing short of astounding. The foot-dragging needs to end now. This is not dilatory. As soon as we come to an agreement, we'll begin to move forward. And we need our Republicans to join with us to demand the full records be made public. If not, the Senate and the American people will be left to wondering, what is he hiding? Senator Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I think what we're saying, we just want to help the Republicans be consistent. They made it very clear they had to have the Kagan records. We Democrats from the majority, we agreed, and we did it. All we're saying, we set the rule. Every single one of them now serving who were there said they wanted that rule. We'd say do the same thing. I've been here for 19 nominations to the Supreme Court. I've never seen such a political nominee. Let me tell you why records are so important. When then Mr. Bybee was up for a Court of Appeals, to ask his records, did not turn him in. We found out after he was confirmed how actively involved he was in the torture procedures during the Bush administration. Does anybody here think he would have been confirmed if those records had come out? Now, we don't know what Judge Kavanaugh did in the Bush White House. I asked him about his knowledge when he testified before of many Bush-era scandals. He said he learned about them in the newspaper. Well, that's stretch credulity, but there's also ample reason to believe that was false. We'll only know it if we have the full record. I have an email from then White House counsel Harriet Miers to Brett Kavanaugh in 2004 when he was staff secretary. It shows the Bush's deputy national security advisor wanted Brett Kavanaugh looped in on efforts to explain was now the discredited Bybee torture memo. That is to spin one of the darkest chapters in our history. Read about it in the newspaper. He was involved with it. We should know all these things. Now we have this unrelated email because of a previous FOIA request. There are 1 million pages of documents and emails on Judge Kavanaugh that we haven't seen. If the first one that comes up has this, what's in the rest of them? So I don't think you can wear blinders when you're talking about somebody for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. Certainly the Republicans said we must do this with Elena Kagan. We agreed because it's important to the American people. Whoever's on there affects every one of us, no matter what party we belong to. But by the same token, having seen the Bybee memos, having seen what was overlooked in the past, we ought to have all of these, and we must have them before we go forward.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Leader. The stakes could not be more high with this nominee. There are very legitimate questions about whether the very purpose of his nomination is to disable the Mueller investigation. He has been through a secretive pre-clearance process run by the Federalist Society on behalf of big Republican interests. He will be replacing a judge who was the swing vote in a lot of areas, whether the United States, for instance, can continue to regulate pollution as it has to protect its citizens. Will Roe versus Wade stand? Will Obergefell versus Hodges stand? Will the power of the judiciary and Congress to oversee the executive branch continue to stand? And will the court follow the lead of Attorney General Sessions and throw out insurance protections for people with pre-existing conditions? All of these things are vital questions for America and for Americans to know. They come in a process in which big Republican interests are behind the pre-clearance process. Big Republican interests spend huge amounts of dark money to influence the confirmation. Big Republican interests appear in the form of amicus front groups, and then big Republican interests win 5-4 partisan decisions from the court. In this environment, it is more imperative than ever that we have access to the same documents that the Republicans asked for with respect to previous nominees. The request is the same, the stakes are higher.
Senator Coons.
As a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I'm ready to do my job of advice and consent. But as you've heard from my colleagues, we cannot do our job of advice and consent without full access to the records of what it is that Judge Kavanaugh did in a senior role in the Bush administration and a senior role in Judge Kenneth Starr's independent counsel investigation. If Judge Kagan, now Justice Kagan, was subjected to the disclosure of all relevant documents from the Clinton archives, I see absolutely no reason why it is unreasonable for us in doing our advice and consent duty to expect the same disclosure of Judge Kavanaugh's long records of experience. What happened last Thursday? Brian Bounds, a nominee for the Ninth Circuit, was in front of the entire United States Senate. On the Judiciary Committee, we had learned that he had concealed from the Review Committee in Oregon State some of his writings in college. When those writings were fully shared with members of the Senate, both Republican and Democrat, the votes were no longer there for his confirmation. As you just heard from Senator Leahy, a similar process unfolded after the confirmation of Judge Bybee to the Ninth Circuit. We should know everything about Judge Kavanaugh's actions at a senior level of the Bush administration. I'll share with you how concerned I am about the future of the special counsel, given some of the comments we already know publicly about Judge Kavanaugh and his views on separation of powers and executive authority. And it is my hope that we will take up and pass on the floor of the Senate a bill that has already cleared the Judiciary Committee by a strong bipartisan margin, the Special Counsel Protection Act. It is important for us to do our job, that we defend the separation of powers and the rule of law. To understand where Judge Kavanaugh stands on these important issues, we have to have the records. If the Republicans are not willing to reach an agreement with us on this disclosure, we have to ask the question, what are they afraid we might find in Judge Kavanaugh's records, given that he has already been so thoroughly and completely vetted by organizations created in order to produce nominees for the District and Circuit and Supreme Court of the United States? What is already known about his record that may be being concealed? I think that's a question worth asking and answering. Thank you.
Thank you from my members of the Judiciary Committee, one of the most articulate group of human beings ever assembled, at least in recent Senate memory. Questions? Yes.
Is it your view that short of document production, everything that crosses his desk as staff secretary, there will be no bipartisan agreement on documents?
Well, look, Senator Feinstein is getting nowhere. She's very flexible. She always works in a bipartisan way. She's getting nowhere with Senator Grassley. I mean, what we're asking for is the very same thing that they asked for. Nothing more, nothing less.
Can you respond to the administration's plan to essentially free up $12 billion or so for farmers who've been hurt by their economic policy?
Well, we don't know where the details are, but talking to farmers in my state and I think around the country, they'd much rather have long-term contracts than short-term aid.
Are you meeting today with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's here on the bill?
No.
Are you concerned about her brand of politics and how that might affect moderate?
No, the Democrats, on economic issues, Democrats are united in a very strong way. We're all for, contrary to what our Republican friends are, we're all for improving health care and lowering the costs. We're all for making it easier for middle-class people and people trying to get there to get a good job. The unity on issues is very, very strong.
Have you spoken to her?
I've spoken to her a while back, yes. Yes. Yes.
How long do you think it will take you to go through this million documents to do a proper thing?
Well, we'll move as quickly as possible. Our goal is sunlight, not the darkening clouds of what they are really doing is obstruction, not what we are doing. They could come to an agreement right now and the process would move along. Why aren't they? That's the question that's looming.
Leader McConnell just stood here very strong, warning Russia not to mess with the U.S. elections. He has spoken supportingly of Van Hollen Rubio. Where do you see that particular bill going right now?
Actions speak louder than words. Today, this afternoon, as I understand it, Senator Coons, he can address this, and Senator Flake are bringing back their resolution. Why are they blocking a simple resolution that says these things? We need real action. And unfortunately, our Republican colleagues, some of them have said some words, but against someone like Putin, you need tough, strong action. We haven't seen our Republican colleagues do any of that yet, any of it. You want to say something, Chris?
I'll simply say Senator Flake and I will be bringing up again this afternoon for a live unanimous consent request, a resolution that says we stand with the intelligence community, we stand with federal law enforcement, we call for the release of the contemporaneous notes and for a briefing by leaders of the administration on what happened in Helsinki, what commitments were made, and we call for full enforcement of the sanctions against Russia provided for in the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions, or CATSA Act. It provides sanctions authority for the president that have not been fully utilized, and we think they should be, in order to impose costs on Russia for their attack on our 2016 election.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks all very much.
I'll keep you apprised. I'll send you an email.
Oh, yeah.
Don't.